Everybody, Andy here again. Day 42. First things first, I should put the figures down there. And the deaths reported yesterday for Monday were 288. I suppose technically it's Sunday, isn't it, to Monday? The total number 28,734. But I saw something earlier on today. We are Tuesday, by the way, from the Office of National Statistics. Okay, folks, it's not that easy to say, you know. And they're suggesting, and this is obviously a recognised body. I don't think they're a government body, but they're a recognised authority. And they are saying that there have been over 32,000 deaths in the UK. I'll probably mention this more when the outfall of this comes out. But what they do is they measure deaths as per the death certificates that are actually issued from hospitals, doctors, or whatever, wherever. People who certify someone as having died, unfortunately, and they write a death certificate. Like if you die in hospital, you have to have a death certificate, and it gives a cause of death on there. And these are all the death certificates that have been issued. I think it wasn't even up to the end of April. It was close to the end of April. So it's not current, if you see what I mean. But all the death certificates have got COVID-19 on them. I don't know how they measure this in other countries, but that obviously puts us way above the Italian figure. And, if you go back once again, the government thought they would be doing well, inverted commas, if they got the death rate below 20,000. And even Boris Johnson the other day, after he came back, had said that he thought what they'd done was a success. But if 32,000 deaths is a success, Mr. Johnson, yes, I'm a banana, as someone once said. Anyway, and talking about the deaths, actually, one of the things that brings it home to you, obviously, if you're affected personally, where it's a friend, a relative, family member, or something like that, it brings it home personally to you. But other things that brings it into the light in some ways, how it affects everybody, is how what we call celebrities or well-known people have unfortunately succumbed to this particular virus, not just in this country but all over the world. I mean, we had John Prine, the musician in America, died not long ago, and I know there's several people from the sort of the New York scene that I've read about it who've died sadly as well, and I'm sure there's people right across the world. And we had here Tim Brooke Taylor, who was a comedian, broadcaster, writer, actor, etc., who I remember from my, not necessarily childhood, and that's the point. If they were childhood sort of idols or people that you remember from your childhood, characters, then you're sort of half expecting that. But these are people, okay, they might be in their 70s or something like that, but they're your adults, people that you remember from your adult years. And Tim Brooke Taylor died a few weeks ago now. But another one died yesterday. Dave Greenfield from this band. These are Stranglers. Look, I've got this. I was talking the other day about the punk and new wave show that I did for Hastings Rock, and I played Get a Grip on Yourself. This particular track on it's one of the first tracks that I played, and related a little story which I shall relate in a minute. But this is the first single they ever bought. As you can see, it's actually got up here. It was 40 pence. It was in the discount rack of the particular shop that I used to buy my singles in. And I've got this at the back. There's Dave up there. Look. So, and they were an unlikely band. They were an unlikely sort of punk band formed in, I think, 1974, 1975. Those are the Guildford Stranglers. They were formed in Guildford. But they sort of latched on because they had that attitude. I mean, you've only got to look at that. I mean, you wouldn't want to mess with those guys, would you? As other people have said, all of them look a bit mean. And John Jacques Burnell was famous for his sort of karate and judo and all that sort of stuff. And they weren't afraid of getting into a scrap by all accounts. But one interesting thing about Dave Greenfield, apart from other things that I might say in a minute, is he used to live in Brighton, came from Brighton, not far along the coast from Hastings for those who are elsewhere. But he played in bands in Hastings back in the sort of late 60s, early 70s in a couple of bands. I think one was called Rusty Butler or something. They were like a prog rock band, more of a band that they played at the Marquee and things like that. So a friend of mine, thank you Sarah, sent me a couple of photos earlier because I thought, I'm sure I've heard this somewhere about Dave Greenfield having played locally. This is, some time ago. So I asked a friend and she said, yeah, that's right. And they gave me some details and sent me a couple of photos. And he played in another band, I think they were called Freeway. There were loads of bands called Freeway, weren't there? And they were playing at sort of the All Community Centre. in the old, sort of basically up by the old town of Hastings. So there's a personal connection there, a local connection with somebody like that from before he got in that band. But as I said on the punk and the new wave special that I did the other day on the Hastings Rock. They were one of the first bands that I got into that sort of, well, they were the first bands that actually released music. As I said, their single, Get a Grip on This, came out in very early 1977. Their first album, Eratus Norvegicus, which is an absolute classic, came out in April of 1977. So they were releasing songs pretty early, and I actually saw them a couple of times in 1977. The first time I saw them was in Liverpool. Both times were in Liverpool. The girlfriend, the ex-girlfriend at the time, who was in Liverpool University, so I used to go up to Liverpool quite a lot. And during that time of the Silver Jubilee, just in the run-up to the Silver Jubilee, Queen's Silver Jubilee in June of 1977, I went up there for like my summer holiday was spent in Liverpool, doing all the things that you do when you're sort of visiting places. And they were supposed to be playing, after the 18th of June, it's before the actual celebrations themselves. And they were supposed to be playing the Empire Theatre in Liverpool. But because of the furore, especially around the Sex Pistols bringing out their album, Nevermind the Bollocks, which came out around that time, and their single, God Save the Queen, and all that was going on with that sort of thing, the town councils and that everywhere were banning gigs, were shutting down gigs, so they'd actually stopped that gig happening. But what the Stranglers did is that there was a little club in Liverpool called Eric's, which was opposite, in a place called Matthew Street, opposite where the Cavern Club used to be. And I mentioned the other day, the Cavern Club at the time was just a car park. It shows how much they thought about that. Eric's was a brilliant club, and I think the first band to ever play there were the Stranglers in late 1976, but by June of 77, they were loads, just everybody. It's unbelievable the amount of people that played there. And I managed to go and see them on a Sunday lunchtime because the other gig was cancelled. They decided to put two gigs on. Like a matinee at Sunday lunchtime and then a later gig in the evening. I went down there with, say, my girlfriend, and interesting story. When I went up to Liverpool, I took two albums with me, which I was really playing quite a lot at the time. Ratus Norvegicus, which had all these stickers and everything in it. And the other one was actually a Judas Priest album. I can't remember which. I think it might have been Sad Wings of Destiny. Sort of that sort of, is still across those sort of the old school and the new wave, if you want to call it that. And I took it up and put one of these stickers from the Stranglers album on the door of her room. She goes, "Oh my God, I can't have that," because all of her friends were basically like you class as hippies. She said, "Oh, I can't put that on there. Now they're going to think I've turned into a punk or something." And I basically had to drag her along to this gig at Eric's at, I'd say, on this Sunday lunchtime. And so we went in, and she said, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" And it was brilliant. I loved it. You right up front, right at the club, very small stage, very small club. Anywhere who's been to somewhere like that, like the Marquee Club in London, and countless venues that are still like that now. Exactly what I was talking about the other day, where these bands come from. So up close and personal with a band who were in their prime right then, in that particular time of June of 1977, and she loved it. And I went back about a month later, back to Liverpool, and all of her friends were talking about punk music. They were all playing the Stranglers, and they were all playing the Sex Pistols, and probably cutting their hair and that sort of stuff as well. But the second time I saw them was in 1977, just about the time they released their second album, No More Heroes, and they got bigger, and they played at the Liverpool University. I think it was October. And I remember going along to that, and it had changed. The atmosphere had completely changed. Punk had become fashionable. People were dressing up in, all that stuff. I mean, I hate all that stuff. If someone tells me I've got to wear a uniform, I'll run a mile type of thing. But one of the interesting things about it was, because people were trying to cotton on, they were doing it in their own way. And the thing that sticks in my mind is several of the young girls there, instead of having handbags, they had kettles. And they were using old kettles, not electric ones presumably, but old stoves that you put on the stove, old kettles as handbags. That's quite interesting if you think about it, and they're quite a novel way of doing it, and recycling, I suppose, a primitive type of recycling. But there you go. So that's my stories about these guys. I mean, I didn't see them again. Still bought their albums. I've got several of their singles actually, included. This is still one of my favourites. So there you go. A part of my young adulthood is gone, and hopefully there won't be any more. But unfortunately, there may well be. So rest in peace, Dane David Greenfield, thanks very much for all the music. That's a brilliant keyboard playing. I know they were compared to the Doors as sort of a 70s version, but something a bit different. They brought something different. I suppose they went on to make albums like Black and White and others, which experimented a little bit more because of the nature of the band, I suppose, and where they come from before the sort of real new wave, if you want to call it rap, rather than the punk sort of stuff. But they still kept that attitude, and what I can make out, they kept that attitude right up to the end, and hope I'm like that as well. So anyway, stay strong, stay safe, stay at home, and hopefully I'll speak to you tomorrow. Goodbye.